Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. So for today we're going to be reading chapter 18. So if you have some book recommendations, let me know in the comment section and let's get started. Chapter 18. The group admired Izuku's mark for several seconds, each of them having their own conspiracies swimming through their head, two of which weren't far off at all. Mizuki flicked her gaze up to Inko's beaming face. She glanced over at Mizuki. Her smile somehow seemed to widen. Now that Koski was closer, he could see the copper details of a new light. Gave the mark depth. Not much, but some. Koski felt drawn to the mark, which he found extremely confusing. He drew his eyebrows together in thought, snapping his lingering eyes up to his mother. To his surprise, she was already staring internally at Koski. Her eyes were glassy almost. Hushed tears splashed over her magnifying scarlet eyes that so clearly replicated Koski's. It's so familiar, Izuku muttered lowly. He fidgeted shakily with his sleeve, deep in his own thought. Koski took a moment to glance at his mother's eyes, face contouring into one of the mock confusion. Why is it so similar? Koski's mind supplied, and he flicked his own scarlet orbs down towards Izuku's mark once again. The way the orange and the red mixed together was just so familiar, but it was definitely different than the way Mizuki's eyes were colored. Koski just couldn't pinpoint where the fuck he seemed seen that color before, but he swore he's seen it before. So familiar. Izuku whispered again, rubbing his mark lightly with his other hand. So homey, he muttered with an odd tone. Koski's grip on Izuku's waist tightened slightly as he glanced up at Inko. She seemed to have the same reaction as his mother, but she was smiling so widely at Koski. Why? The blonde had no clue, not one. Oh, Kachan, Izuku began, causing Koski's attention to be fixed again to the green on his lap. You should put the band on, he simply stated, pointing shyly at the black band resting on the table beside Inko's bed. His voice was still laced with sadness, but it seemed calmer, more collected, and even a bit happier. The blonde's heart beat rapidly increased, beating victoriously against his rib cage. He swallowed harder, closing his eyes for a few seconds before responding. Why? He slowly asked, not trusting himself to say much else. Izuku cocked his head to the side in confusion, acting like he didn't understand Koski's question. Do you not want to, He paused, curling in on himself again. Koski panicked, thinking Izuku was about to cry again. I'll wear it, he blurted out in a random act of desperation. Izuku calmed slightly as Mizuki slowly handed the band over to Koski. He took it with a outstretched hand, balling his hand up into a fist in front of Izuku, and slid the large band over it, covering his skin from his prying eyes. So Izuku, what have you been up to these past few years? It's been a while since I've seen you. Mizuki smiled widely at the greenette. Missed you around at the house, you know. Masaru has too. It's been so long since you've came over, she continued, trying to find a way to ask what she had to and to calm him down, hopefully getting him more comfortable. Izuku shrunk calmly into Koski's embrace again, hands going behind his head to scratch at his neck. I guess it has been a while, hasn't it? He responded with a small smile in his eyes. Mizuki nodded, her smile not faltering for a second. I can't believe I fell out of contact with you two. Business has been pretty hectic, she chuckled, tears prickling the edges of her eyes. Inko nodded too, still smiling at her son and Koski. Izuku used to ask me every day if we were going over. Inko spilled, her own laughter filling the room. Used to jump up and down in a fit when I told him no. Mizuki chuckled again. This brat used to run outside for hours, refusing to come inside until I accepted to allow him to call Zuku. Mizuki set an evil smirk over at her son. Oh, fuck you, that's not true. Koski rumbled angrily, even though he knew it was true. He did in fact throw a tantrum when Izuku wasn't allowed to come over, and did in fact force his mother to allow him to call Izuku. Hey, he was an addicted child. You can't blame him. You were 5. Of course you don't completely remember it. Mizuki slapped her knee, another chuckle thundering in her throat. The Bakugos had lost contact with the Midoriyas about 3 years ago after Inko randomly changed her phone number. By randomly, it was due to Hisashi's first trip back home. Something Izuku had no knowledge of. It had happened a random day at school, so Izuku wasn't home. Hisashi had came home for about 3 hours. In those 3 hours, she was told she wasn't allowed to speak to Mizuki anymore. Of course, they still talked for the first year when they ran into each other on the streets, but after Hisashi stayed with Inko and Izuku, they didn't talk at all. 2 years of absolutely no contact. Not one day without Mizuki worrying for her best friend. Inko took a deep inhale, and the room went silent again. Izuku, how about you stay with Mizuki and Mizaru until you can move into the dorms again? She asked shyly, not sure how her son would react to this. Mizuki quickly noticed her hesitation, cut in to hopefully make Izuku accept. We would love to have you over, Izuku. How about that? I'm sure you two will be allowed to move into the dorms in a few days. But how about you stay with us for a little? It would be fun, just like when you and Koski were little. She smiled widely, tears jumping back into her eyes. Koski rubbed calmly circles in Izuku's side, secretly praying Izuku would accept so he wouldn't have to worry about Izuku being tormented by his father anymore. As Izuku gazed around the room, taking a good look at Mizuki and Inko, taking a quick glance at Koski, noticing his small affectionate smile that lingered on his lips, he noticed something. These people actually cared for him. They weren't pitying him. They weren't just trying to make him feel better for themselves. They truly wanted Izuku to feel better. They were safe people, ones he could trust. Izuku smiled, not the half-assed smile he's been using for the past year. No, Izuku smiled a true smile. Once laced with pure happiness, he felt at home like he belonged. He hadn't felt like this in years, and he never wanted it to end. I'd love that. Thank you, he whispered, tears finally falling down his freckled cheeks. Koski carefully wiped them away, rocking the boy side to side calmly. The 4 of them all flicked their attention to the front of the room, over by the curtain, as they heard someone clear their throat. Standing there was an extremely contented smile with no other than Mizaru Bakugo, a few papers hanging loosely in his hands. So what did I miss? After they filled Mizaru in with what would be happening, how Izuku was going to be staying with them, and allowing Mizaru to admire Izuku's mark, the hospital room was filled with the sweet tone of laughter and happiness. They were all sharing memories of Koski and Izuku's when Koski and Izuku were children, lighting up the mood. Oh, remember when Koski saw Izuku crying and literally picked him up and ran him all the way back home? Mizuki butted in, laughing hysterically as her son's face turned a light pink shade of pink. Izuku had moved off him by now, and instead was sitting calmly beside his mother. Koski shook his head at the memory. Maybe. Just maybe Koski had overreacted as a child and carried Izuku all the way out the woods just to give him to Inko to make sure he was all right. Just maybe he was worried, okay? And when Izuku brought Koski that angry dog onesie, Inko snorted out loud with Misuki. He literally forced him to wear it to daycare. Both females were now in a fit of giggles, laughing at their sons. Hey, it fit him! Izuku chuckled along with them, a light dusting of pink along his cheekbones. Mizuki tried to hold back her giggles. Well, yeah, he fucking tried to bite you when you told him to put it on. She filled and bent over, tears of laughter running down her face. Didn't he wear it to bed for the next, year? Mizuru butted in, his own smile illuminating the room. Mizuki stopped for a moment, trying to remember. After a few seconds, her face morphed into realization, and she toppled over, her hand over her mouth to cover her laughs. I had to fucking fight him to get it off. She broke into a fit of laughter once again. I still remember him flipping me off and refusing to take it off. She paused, laughter stopping as she contemplated something. Say, she held back a large laughter. Brat, she began, her scarlet eyes squinting at Koski. Are you a furry? What the? Kachan, calm down. We're in the hospital. I'm not a fucking he screamed, but his mother's laughter was louder and drained his voice out. Is that your kink? Are you a fucking furry? Inko bursted out laughing along with Misuki, both females having tears roll down their face. What? No! Koski yelled, horror in his voice. No! He faked a gag, covering his mouth to secretly hide his own laughter. I'm not a fucking furry. What the fuck, lady? He crossed his arm, disgust lingering his face. What's your fucking language, brat? There are children in here. I'm the fucking youngest. What the fuck are you talking about? Oh, yeah. Mizuki snorted, smacking her knee. They stayed like this for the next few hours before Inko became extremely tired. Hey, you guys should leave. I'm being taken care of here. I'll be okay, she yawned, glancing over at Koski before continuing. And you both need to go to sleep. Look at the bags under your eyes. She pointed at Izuku and Koski, affectionate smile on her lips. Izuku frowned, not really wanting to leave his mother. Are you sure you're going to be okay? He asked, worriedly grabbing his mother's hand. She waved him off quickly. Oh, I'll be fine. You really should get some sleep, hun. She poked her son's wrist. Don't want your soulmate worrying about you, right? She smiled at her son, flickering her gaze over to Koski for a few seconds. Koski stared at the ground. His scarlet orbs were swimming with worry and sadness. He had come to the conclusion that no, Izuku Midoriya was not his soulmate and never will be. So of course Inko wasn't talking about him. It made Koski's heart ache, but he kept telling himself to move on, that Izuku deserves better. Izuku slowly nodded, a small smile lingering on his lips. Right. He bowed down and gave his mom a loving kiss on the forehead, brushing her green locks to the side. Love you, he whispered, a small tear falling down his face. Inko lifted her hand and wiped it away. I'll be okay, I promise, okay? She kissed his cheek. Love you. Izuku nodded, stepping back and grabbing his bag from the bed. Mizuki and Mizuru both said their goodbyes. Mizuki gave Inko a long and hard bear hug, as Mizuru simply said a pitiful goodbye and told her to get some rest. Inko happily nodded, smiling at her two closest friends. They truly were like family to her. She had known them for so long. Sometimes she had to remind herself that no, technically Mizuki wasn't her sister, and in fact, just a close friend. She loved them like family at least, and nothing could change that. They had been with her through almost everything. She was so grateful for that. She did love them. As they backed up, turning to leave, Koski finally took his turn. He gave her a short wave, scattering the scratching the back of his neck. Bye, Auntie. Get better soon. And right before he was about to walk away, Inko sat up and grabbed his sleeve. Do you mind staying with me for a minute? She asked him, glancing behind him at Masuki and Mizaru. They both got the message immediately and waved one last time, saying a short, we will be standing outside. Come out when you're done, before ushering themselves and Izuku out. Izuku looked extremely confused as they lightly pushed him out of the room, explaining plainly that Inko wanted to talk to Koski. The blonde was worried. What did she want to say? Was she going to yell at him? He definitely deserved it, that was for sure. Inko simply pointed to the chair with a smile. No emotion other than happiness laced on her features. He hesitantly took the seat. Yeah, Auntie? He gulped, expecting the worst when her face contoured into a serious expression. Thank you, thank you, Koski. I mean it, she whispered. Huh? Koski breathed, confused. Thank you so much for saving Izuku, and for taking care of him. She smiled, tears leaking out of her eyes. Oh, it's not, he began. He really doesn't trust many people nowadays. Seeing him so calmly with you was like a fresh breath of air. Thank you so much. Her tears were coming faster, and Koski didn't know what to do. Please make sure he's happy. He needs someone he can trust, someone he could talk to. I know he lost some of the trust a few years ago, but Izuku would never not trust you. Okay, Koski? He nodded, trying to understand. Please take care of him. I trust you with him, okay? He gulped, tears of his own eyes. Yes, Auntie. I promise I will. She opened her arms wide, the question undeniable. He slowly sunk into her embrace, hugging her deeply back. Thank you, Koski, she whispered. You saved Izuku so many times. I don't know how to repay you. He saved me too. It's a favor for a favor. He smiled, hugging her tighter. Make sure to tell me how it goes, she whispered as they pull apart. How what goes? He questioned, grabbing his own bag from the bed. How what goes? He questioned, grabbing his bag from the bed. You'll see, she smiled once again. Koski shrugged it off and waved, muttering one last goodbye before heading out the door. Okay, that was chapter 18.